My name is Dags. Dags as in Dags. Dags. I'm 21. I'm a third year college student and I'm Filipino. Hey! I'm also a lesbian and a barista, which is sort of fork found in kitchen. But yeah, the thing about Filipino culture is that it's so diverse. It's so incredibly diverse for many different reasons. One of which we are Filipinos are descendants of the Austronesian people. Another is that our geographical location made us a regular stop when it comes to trade routes, back in the day. So we traded with many different cultures that slowly just became incorporated with our own cultures. And then, of course, there's what I think is probably the biggest reason, but we were colonized multiple times. We're ran through. Like, I'm sorry, but the Philippines just ran through. There were the Spanish, Spain colonized us. They colonized us the longest. And so they have the most influence, especially in our language. National language is Filipino. But if you were to speak to a Spanish speaker as a Filipino, or if you were to listen to someone speaking Spanish, I think you would pick up on a lot of words that are almost the same or similar to our Filipino words, which is it's cool, but it's also sad because it really shows how much of our native language was derived from another nation's language. Do you get what I mean? Like the diversity is definitely cool, but something that I think about a lot and something that I know a lot of my peers think about a lot is what our culture would look like if we hadn't been so heavily colonized. Japan, in terms of cultural influences, I don't think we really got much from them. It was more of war crimes. And then for America, um, bro, they didn't even culturally influence us. They just cursed us, if I'm being honest. Not to be dramatic, but one of the major things that they gave us was the education system, the public school system, which seems like a good thing on the surface. But when you study what was going on during that time, not just in the Philippines, but also in America, it becomes very clear that every decision they made when it came to handling the Philippines and managing the Philippines, because for a period of time they did technically own us. It becomes clear that those decisions were made with the goal to make my country useful for them, which is like, it makes sense. And it's sort of expected when you're talking about a colonial power. But the thing is that America sort of put on this facade that they were they were here to help. They were here to liberate us, to grant us independence. But up to now, if you're caught up with the current updates on the Philippines' relationship with America, I don't think it would even be a reach to say that the Philippines' current government is just a puppet government. I'm being so for real right now, and that our president is sort of just acting as a puppet for the United States. But on a more lighthearted note, yes, I think my culture is very rich and colorful and fun. I sort of imagine it to be like a mosaic, those pieces of art that's made out of little shards of glass. That's how I imagine us to be like, where each shard of glass sort of represents a different colonial power or a different nation that culturally influenced us. And either way, it's just, it's really beautiful. Our food, it's diverse. And even though we have a lot of dishes that originated from other parts of the world, there's always that Filipino flavor to it. We always change it up a bit. Same thing goes with music. If you're not familiar, you need to look up budots. Budots, budots, and don't say it like badoots. I saw a video of someone covering budots and they pronounced it badoots. It's not badoots, it's budots. and it's a genre, it's a niche, like underground genre of music. It's I think it's like considered rave music, scene music, like club music in the Philippines. But if I remember correctly, it came from like the slums of Davao, which is in Mindanao. It's the most southern part of the Philippines, the ass cheek of the Philippines. If you look at it on the map, it's there. And it was, from what I know, that genre was invented by local DJs because of their lack of resources. They didn't have fancy plugins to work with, unlike Western producers and whatnot. So they sort of had to get creative with the sounds that you would find on the street. And that's how Budots was born. And it's like it's a really fucking like not everyone is gonna like it, but I don't know. Part of it is just like empowering to Filipinos, that iconic sort of like siren-y woot woot, like that kind of sound. It's so funny, and yeah, you should definitely check that out in terms of music. But aside from that specific genre, I think Filipinos are so naturally creative, right? Not only that, but because of our lack of support, um, you can tell that the art we create, the music, the paintings, the films, the literature, everything that we make is so genuine and intentional and sincere, and it's crafted with so much love because it's rare that an artist would make art here for the money. Because if there's one thing that Filipinos know, it's that there is no money in art. You say you want to be an artist, and the first thing that your titas and titos will ask you is, how are you going to get money from that? Or what job are you going to get from that? And I get it, it's not their fault that there's no money in the creative industries. And I really wish that local artists could receive more support, more appreciation. But this the lack of it, I feel really has driven our local artists and creatives to make purely and solely for the love of the craft. Also, something that I wanted to point out is that art in the Philippines, in my opinion, has roots in revolution. I think so much of Filipino culture as a whole has roots in revolution because being a revolutionary is a big part of our identity. All throughout Filipino history, we were it was just consistently us fighting against our oppressors over and over again, new oppressor, new revolutionaries, but it's always the same thing. And because of that passion for liberation and whatnot, I think a lot of it is translated into art. And me personally, a lot of the artists that I know, the local artists that I know here, they aren't afraid to make art speaking out against the government, speaking out against imperialism, feudalism, capitalism, even in songs and literature, especially in literature. They're never afraid to shine a light on societal issues and whatnot. It's very brave, because we are living in an era of censorship and red tagging and all of that stuff. So it's always safer to stay quiet when it comes to issues like those. But the artists that I follow, the artists that I know, they're never hesitant to make art advocating for the weak, for the powerless, to make art that speaks out against the atrocities being committed by our government and other international powers. So, yeah. I guess my go-to way to show off my culture and share it with people is through social media, mainly my ASMR channel, which is a little strange, I think, but surprisingly, people like it when I do that. I have multiple videos where I teach my audience how to speak Filipino. I teach them certain slang words, colloquial terms, not just touristy phrases like mabuhay and whatnot. And I don't know, you can learn a lot about a nation's identity, their mindset based on their language. Like, you know how sometimes there's a word in Filipino that can't be directly translated to English, but it encapsulates this sort of feeling or idea that someone who only speaks English would understand. And I don't know, it's a really beautiful thing for me. I love learning about different phrases from different languages and different cultures because I think there's always a lesson that you can find in them one way or another. Aside from those kinds of videos, sometimes I would post more serious content in which I detail some things that happen in my country that definitely uh wouldn't be shared by Western media, things that don't get as much attention and coverage as they deserve. Um, there were times during rainy season where there was so much floods going on, so much flooding, so many people losing their lives, their homes, and I would post about those things because people on the other side of the world wouldn't know about that, and that's not their fault. Recently there was this massacre that happened in an island in the Visayas region of the Philippines. It was carried out by the Philippine military against peasant farmers and activists, which was just so horrible. It's just like genuinely just evil moves there by the government. And what's funny is that atrocities like that, they don't happen in a vacuum. They're always rooted in some other issues. Um, and I know that people are probably sick of hearing this word, but when you look into issues like that, you realize that at the root of it, it's usually capitalism and US imperialism. Like I'm not even joking, it's not even a reach. But yeah, and the reason that I like to speak out or speak about those issues, especially online, is because I know that the majority of my viewers, I don't know how this happened, but the majority of my viewers are um American or Western. And so they don't even realize how their government is impacting my people from thousands and thousands of miles away. And I would often get comments saying that, wow, I had no idea this was happening. Um, the news never covers this. It's the right thing to do to shed light and spread awareness on these things. People may argue that it doesn't really do anything. I think that simply being aware of a problem is always the first step. And there's so many people who don't even get the chance to make that first step. Because, like I believe, you can't fix the problems that you don't see, you know? I think a lot of the problems that we ordinary Filipinos face currently are because of US imperialism. And see, it's not an exaggeration to say that the current government, the current president especially, merely serves as a puppet or a lapdog to the US. As we've seen, there's been this growing military presence of the American military here in the Philippines, which so many people are not in favor of because what they do is they take so much of our land in order to build military bases, military zones, and now with the Pax Silica, we're giving up even more of our land for AI data centers. And if I'm not mistaken, Israel has something to do with that as well. It's supposedly this sort of joint deal or agreement made across different nations to basically join together to defeat China's monopoly on the tech industry or what have you. And maybe to the ruling class, maybe to the ultra rich businessmen and the tech lords of the country, this seems like a good thing. It seems like a good deal, good investment, and whatnot. But to the ordinary Filipinos, those who live in the rural areas who will be stripped of their homes, their land, their livelihood to make way for these international powers to come in here and take whatever they want, it's nothing but it does nothing but harm for them. And I wish that more Filipinos would be made aware of it and more people from other parts of the world would be made aware of it because at the end of the day we are killing we are killing the planet by doing these by making these projects, these quote unquote technological advancements that will only really benefit a select few. As for the issues within the government itself, it's just a circus at this point. If you're not caught up, our former president is currently in The Hague, detained for crimes against humanity. So, yay, Pinoy pride. And one of his accomplices is currently a senator. Yay, Pinoy pride. And what's funny is that this senator, his name is Bato because he looks like a rock, like a literal rock. He's if you search him up, Bato de la Rosa, you'll see why he's called Bato. But anyways, he was recently served an arrest warrant by the ICC since he was, he did assist the the former president in carrying out these crimes against humanity. And basically, he is now nowhere to be found. He ran away. He was another senator helped him run away, and now he's in hiding because he doesn't want to go to jail, as you would think. And it's just so terrible because Filipinos or Filipino politicians have developed this terrible, terrible belief, this sort of impunity mindset. They think that they are above the law, that they're untouchable, um, that their actions don't have consequences. And right now, it seems like that is the case because even with all the evidence stacked up against them, we have sitting senators, sitting politicians who have been proven to have stolen the people's money, confidential funds, um, taxpayers' money just pocketed, stolen, billions of pesos that were originally meant to fund flood control projects. As I mentioned, uh, the Philippines is very, very prone to floods because of our geographical location and, well, climate change, of course. But year after year, the floods keep getting worse, and we're just meant to sit here and take it because we've become so used to glorifying resilience that it's just it's just increased our tolerance for government neglect. Does that make sense? And so all of these funds just gone. Funds that could have been used to build infrastructure that could have potentially saved lives, and homes. It's it's just so terrible, and I hate how virtually nothing is being done about these people, these criminals at this point. They're not being held accountable, they're not being held responsible, they're not facing any consequences. And I'm sure if you're American, then you see the same thing happening in your government. And I would assume that you too are sick of it, just as I am, just as we are. And I think that goes to show that us in the working class, you know, the masses, us Filipinos, you working class people from other countries, we have more in common with each other than we do with our leaders, with the ruling class of our countries, with the top 1%. And I think that's something that needs to be talked about more. So, yeah, I, I love that people are doing stuff for it in America. And I'm glad that people like me, people of different cultures and ethnicities, are finally getting um, opportunities to speak about their cultures. They're finally being given platforms to spread awareness about, just what it's like to be a person of color living in America and whatnot, to be a person of color in general. And I'm glad that I myself was given the opportunity to talk a bit about my country, about my people, and just all of the things that we're going through. Um, a lot of things that I said were a bit tragic. I know it's a bit frustrating, but at the end of the day, the Philippines is beautiful. The people are beautiful inside and out, I might add. There's lots to hate, but there's always lots to love about the place that you're from, the identity that your country has, and the things that you got from it, the things that you get from your cultures and your ethnicity. And yeah, it was really fun being able to discuss all of that and share my own thoughts on subjects related to that matter.